Home sales in California increased to the highest level in over 2 years, and home prices are still higher than they were at this time last year. However, there's some new trends actually uncovered that could change absolutely everything. So, if you're looking to buy or sell a house in California, or you're just curious about what's happening right now, then this video is for you. It's my goal that after watching this video, you'll have a better understanding about what's happening right now in the California housing market so you guys can make a more informed decision about whether to buy or sell a house here. I'm Jason Walter, a Sacramento Realtor, your resource for all things related to the housing market here in the US. Thank you everyone for joining me today. I appreciate you, and let's begin. So here's a general snapshot of what's happening right now based on a new report from the California Association of Realtors just posted today. This covers the entire month of February. And of course, today's video, just like previous videos I made for years now, is only looking at single family houses. So this excludes brand new home construction, and of course excludes multifamily units as well. So closed home sales for existing home sales, again, rose by 2.6% year over year. But this pace at 283,000 is one of the slowest paces in over 2 years. I'll share that with you guys in a little bit. Meanwhile, California's median sale price is at $829,000, an increase of 2.8% from February of 2024. I was going to say 5. I'm going to share a lot of trends regarding how this increase up by 2.8%. How does that compare to years past? Because 2.8% doesn't really tell us a full picture. Meanwhile, the months of inventory in California is at 4 months, a big increase up by 38%. We're also seeing a big gain of inventory as well. The amount of houses for sale in California rose big time this last month. Also, days in the market is at 26 days, so it's taking about 18% longer to sell a house, but overall, houses are still selling very quickly in the state. Okay, let's talk about sales, and we'll go over home prices in today's video. So the current sales pace, 283,000, is the highest level in about 28 months, an increase of 2.6% year over year, and a big increase up by nearly 12% month over month. However, I would say this is a big percentage on a low number, or a small number. As you guys can see, ever since really 2023 and the last half of 22, we've been having this lack of home sales in California. So it's been fairly flat for about 2.5 years. And historically speaking, excluding when we had stay-at-home orders back in early 2020, the levels right now of less than 300,000 is far less than pre-COVID levels, because we should be seeing around 400,000 home sales, not 283,000. So big picture, even though we have increased the highest level in about 28 months, it's still more or less on par with what we saw back in early of 2008. Here's a very interesting dynamic that you guys should absolutely be aware of, because when we're talking about the median sale price, this means that half of the houses sold below that amount and half sold above that amount, right? So what is interesting about this is that we're still seeing an increase, a big increase in multi-million-dollar properties that are selling. In fact, homes that sold in February for over $2 million rose by 18%. In the range of $1 million to just under $2 million, that increased by only 2%. In contrast, every single other price segment, excluding the range of $500,000 to $750,000, that was flat, all the other price segments decreased compared to 1 year ago. Therefore, the mix in sales of more expensive properties selling is impacting overall the state's median sale price because we're seeing more expensive houses selling and a decrease of more affordable houses that are selling right now. Let's have a look at this, because this is another way to look at this over the past 1 year. So this is this February, right? We're seeing a decrease in sales for less than $500,000 and a big gain for sales over $2 million. That's a dark blue line right here. But it is a deceleration compared to the past couple of months. So back in December last year, we saw a gain of up nearly about 40% of $2 million properties or higher, and now it's at about 18%. But again, we're seeing a small gain of $1 million to $2 million. This is much different than 1 year ago, where we saw gains of $750,000 to over $2 million back then, gains year over year. Whereas right now, we're only seeing big gains of multi-million dollar properties right now. Also, the share of multi-million dollar properties that are selling is really changing the mix in sales. In addition, for this February, around 1/3 of all home sales were for over $1 million in the state, but only 24% were for homes that sold for less than $500,000. So we're seeing more home sales for over $1 million than home sales for less than $500,000. Pretty wild. And this is really exactly the opposite right before COVID, because pre-COVID, it was around 45 to about 50% sold for less than 500,000, and only around 15 to 20% were selling for over $1 million. And ever since really COVID, we've been seeing this, of course, sharp rise in prices, what I'll share with you guys in a little bit, but also a sharp increase in the share of houses selling over $1 million. In my personal opinion, this mix in sales of more expensive properties selling is really impacting the overall state's median sale price, which I'll share with you guys here in a little bit. All right, so that was closed home sales. Let's have a look at pending home sales, a measure of home buyers getting their offers accepted. That actually decreased by 0.5% year over year. So level of pending home sales is more or less in line with what we saw back in February of 2024. All right, let's talk about prices. I have a lot to share regarding this. And by the way, if you guys are getting value out of today's video, then please hit the like button. I really appreciate that. So it says here that California's median sale price increased for the 20th month in a row. So on a year-over-year basis, we have 20 consecutive months in which price gains have been gaining momentum. So again, we're at 829,000, an increase of 2.8% year over year, but a decrease down by 1.2% month over month. And by the way, it is entirely normal to see a decrease in prices from January through February. Entirely normal, because that is a seasonal effect in which prices are at the low point in the winter months, and then of course increase in the spring home buying season and summer months. And of course, I have data to support that. And that is this right here. So here's what I pulled from the Realtor's website, the date, and of course the price. Everything else is based on my own analysis here. So I find this to be very interesting. Let me know if you guys think this is interesting as well. The all-time record high was set back in May of 2024. At that time, we're at 908,000. Now we're at nearly 830,000. So therefore, we're down by about $79,000 compared to the all-time record high. And again, we're up by 2.8%. This is something I found to be really interesting, because take a look at this right here. So a gain of 2.8% is far less than the historical average going back to 2010. In fact, below there, as you can see, the average February year-over-year change going back then is a gain of 8.6%, whereas this year we saw a small gain up by only 2.8%. Therefore, this is far lower than historical norms, but still increasing year over year, but again, at a slower pace compared to years past. So for example, 1 year ago, we were up by a staggering 9.7%. Now it's only up by 2.8%. Looking at pre-COVID, let's just look at that real quick. February of 2019, right there, we saw a gain of 2.2%. So more or less in line with what we're seeing right now. February 2018, though, up by 8.8%. 2017, up by 8%, and a gain of 3.5% in 2016. So the gain up by 2.8% is actually lower than pre-COVID levels, but also lower than the historical average going back to 2010. However, though, looking at February of 2008, let's take a look at that. February of 2008, look at that, a giant decrease down by 24.5% in one single year. And now we're up by 2.8%. So big picture, what I would say regarding this is that, of course, it's not nearly as bad as 08 when inventory was absolutely increasing, skyrocketing. But the gains of home prices up by 2.8% is decelerating due to the sharp rise of inventory, and coupled with the fact we have elevated prices and home prices, which is keeping home sales at, albeit, low levels. So for example, like I mentioned right there, the gain in prices is slowing down, likely from an increase in supply. So for example, February this year marked the 13th consecutive month of annual gains in housing inventory or the amount of houses for sale. In addition, the continued rise in houses selling for over $2 million is helping support the growth rate in the state's median sale price. So for example, the mix in sales of more expensive houses is propping up overall the state's median sale price. All right, that's the year-over-year change. Let's take a look at the month-to-month change because that decreased again down by 1.2%. This is not as bad as last month. Back in January, we saw a decrease down by 2.6%. But again, these figures are not seasonally adjusted, and it's actually normal to see price decreases in January and February, right? But this decline down by 1.2 is actually in line with historical averages because the average January through February change since 2010 is a decrease down by 1%. Also, I added this as well. Looking at the gains over the past 5 years since February of 2020, a giant increase up by 43%. All right, let's get back to this report here because here's the average sale price to final list price ratio for February. It's at 99.9%, which means on average, out of all the houses that actually did close in February, they sold for only 0.1% less than the final list price. So on average, homes are selling very, very close to the seller's asking price. And by the way, that has been a common trend really ever since mid-2023, but it is actually a little bit lower compared to what happened back in the spring home buying season of 21 and 22. Back then, homes on average were selling about 4 to about 5% over asking, but now they're selling right around the seller's asking price. Speaking of that, the ratio of houses that are selling over asking was at 37.5%. That is actually a 4-month high. Also, not too much lower than the 42% we saw 1 year ago. So this basically means that about 1/3 of all home sales in California this February sold over asking, but of course around 2/3 sold at or below the seller's asking price. All right, let's change gears slightly here and talk about inventory numbers because again, we saw that sharp pullback in prices in 08, and that was because of this right here. Look at that, the month supply in early 2008 was around 16 months, over a 16-month supply, a strong, extremely strong buyer's market in which buyers had a clear advantage over home sellers due to a huge increase in supply, both due to regular home sales, but also foreclosures. And now we only have a 4-month supply this February. So if you want to see similar conditions as 08, we would need to see the month supply quadruple in order to see price gains or price decreases over 20%. But right now we're not seeing that. It's still a seller's market here in California. And when I mean, of course, seller's market, I mean sellers have an advantage over home buyers, but not as strong as it was a year ago. Look at that. The month supply was only 2.9 months 1 year ago. Now it's at 4 months. So a seller's market, but not as strong as it once was. And one of the reasons is this right here, because we're seeing a sharp increase of inventory. Inventory is now up by 51% from February of 2024. That is actually the biggest increase in about 2 years in the state. In fact, this marked the 13th consecutive month of annual gains, which is great news if you're a home buyer because you want to see more options and therefore you don't want to see bidding wars. You want to see prices not increasing at the 25% rates we saw back in 2021, right? So this is good news for home buyers, more inventory, which is causing downward pressure on home prices. Kind of goes in line with what I've been talking about, this deceleration in home prices here in California. Now, one of the reasons why inventory has been increasing at a high clip over the past 2 months now, January and February, is due to this right here. New listings, a measure of people who are homeowners who are listing their house for sale, rose by 24.5% year over year. So now they have grown by double digits for 2 consecutive months, which is causing inventory to rise further. So this February, around 16,000 new listings, higher compared to the past couple of years, but not as high compared to pre-COVID levels. So for example, back in February of 2019, around 21,000 new listings. Now there's less than 17,000. So even though the growth rate on a year-over-year basis for prices is more or less in line with historical norms right now, we're still lagging behind new listings because, of course, people have 3, 4, 5% interest rates and they're doing everything they can to hold on to those rates because interest rates today are much higher than those 3 to 5% rates we saw over the past couple of years. All right, let's also talk about days in the market. That's at 26 days. So homes on average are selling about 4 days longer compared to 1 year ago. So houses taking a little bit longer than 12 months ago. Also, let's talk about price drops because that is at 31.8%, which means around 1/3 of all houses for sale in California have reduced their asking price. That is actually lower than the peak of 2022 though. Back then, that ratio was around 45%. In addition, this is more or less in line with pre-COVID, looking at February of 2015 through February of 2017. That is actually around 30%. So the ratio of price drops right now at around 32% is more or less in line with looking at pre-COVID levels. With that said, if you guys are interested in buying or selling a house in California, then please reach out to me. It's jason@meetjasonwalter.com, or you can check out my website, which is realestateteamfinder.com. Hope you guys got a lot of value out of today's video. Thank you everyone for watching today's video. I really appreciate you. Have an amazing day, and we'll see you in the next video.